shall make it stay. Make it strong. From barriers to breakthrough, we stand with pride. Sedulous collective, we're by your side. Always.
Deserved round of applause, and now we're going to put them in a different kind of hot seat by asking questions. We'll have, Ruby's doing the job. Have you got a microphone, Ruby?
I've got one, please.
Great. Oh, you're first again.
Just to say that Ruby and I went to school together many years ago.
This is
We're part of the Lavender Hill mob.
I remember.
So mine is not so much a question as was said already, so much is done to the community. But it's also, in my opinion, because I've been an activist in the community, I'm a Pan-Africanist for many years standing, is to how we mobilise the community to demand what they actually want, and not to just sit at home moaning and complaining and, saying, oh, this don't happen. We have to make it happen. So how will you see this work energising communities to stand up for themselves, demand what they need to get, and not just leave it to the local councillors? They all have their agenda. Their agenda is to get power and forget about you.
I would like to take this. I'd like to answer.
Wow.
Motivation.
Well, personally, what I try to do is, over the years, I still not really want to get involved in local level politics, or even I used to grumble, I used to be one that used to grumble. After being frustrated and saying, look, I've seen community leaders come and go, they ask people, especially like you said, local councillors and MPs, they come out, they canvass and say, look, what are your concerns? And I noticed we'd only complain at the time, maybe vote once every 4 to 5 years, and then we'll go living our daily life. So, as a living example, I believe that me personally, I will go out, join the job consultant community where the local authority I'm in, and then I noticed when I started to do that and get more involved, more people would approach me and said, oh, why are you getting involved? What's your why? What are you doing with yourself? So I said, look, I do a bit of activism around social housing, domestic abuse, parental alienation. So I said, oh, that's interesting. So what's your passion around that? So I had to explain the circumstances of what I've seen amongst my friends and my peers. So once my friends and peers saw that I've made that headway, and then actually talking to people that they wouldn't meet in the day-to-day lives, they said, oh, I'll come along to that. So I drafted a petition around these things, and then I got about 7,000 signatures, so I was shocked that was more than I expected. I thought it'd be one man and his dog at first. So when that happened, I said, oh, it became influential. Then I started to do maybe record a bit of some of the meetings, obviously with permission. And they said, oh, you're in that space. I've never seen no one from around here doing that. I said, yeah, you can too. I'm not exceptionally intelligent. I said, I'm just like you. I remember the public, so I said, but is the determination the will? And I said that from that, I said, yeah, something needs to be done, otherwise, if we don't do anything, it's what did Stokely Carmichael used to say? If not now, when? If not you, who? So I said, yeah, that I started to embody that. Obviously, Fred Hampton, the Grain Gold Coalition and things like that. So I said, yeah, I like the sound of this, and when I should show people that that's the kind of thing I'm reading into, they said, oh, I want to get involved. And I think if we, all of us done that, you'd find that other people say, listen, they're making headway, so if we help them, we might make more headway. And I think that's how we achieve it. Personal example, leading by example. And then you like the light, shine a little light when it's dark, illuminates, and then someone turns on their phone light as you see in the concerts, and then it's like a sea, it's like the sun.
That's a good one.
Let's go to passage.
Let's hear from Yeah, I definitely agree with Sean there. I think it really is leading by example, and so that's why we're kind of trying to start something here, and this is also why we're very keen on kind of continuing with these types of events, because again, like Raquel said earlier, it's the community in the room, community organizations, but also the stakeholders, because there's often kind of this separation between the two, right? So by bringing everybody in the same room so that we can start seeing each other's perspectives, we might not always agree. That's just part of being human. But the point is that at least we listen to each other and we listen to each other's perspectives, and therefore hopefully little by little we can change people's minds as in, okay, there are actually better ways of doing this, and like Sean said, like actually maybe I can do a little bit more as well. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. I think it's creative, but they still don't come out and do anything.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, right.
Hi, mine again isn't a question, it's more a thank you. I've seen and heard, and it's come across really clearly to me that what you're doing here, doing with love, is for the community, but I want to also say thank you for what you're doing for the wider community of people who are involved in participatory research, because it's through the work that you're doing that I'm going to make my practice better in Birmingham. So I want to say thank you for doing this, and thank you to the whole community here, because what I'm going to go and do is going to be informed by what you've done here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number three.
It's like bingo, isn't it?
Hi. I wanted to, it's like a comment and then a question. I love what you said about love. I think my principles of love guided by the folks has been an integral part of like how you approach decolonizing structures and these sorts of things, and what love means beyond just romantic love into the community love and these sorts of things. So thank you for that. I guess my question is on your processes of decolonization. How do you, as we are communities that were indigenous at one point, but now under the thumb of it being influenced by colonial structures and systems, how do you, as researchers, confront your own the impact that colonial structures has had on you, and in terms of academic research more widely, being that it's more, based even on the English language and these sorts of things, which are still under colonial, and also with the rising of anti-immigrant sentiment and these sorts of things. How do you, as researchers, confront yourselves, confront the impact that colonial powers have had on your community, and I guess what challenges do you anticipate with the current shift at the moment with anti-immigrant sentiment on the rise?
Wow. Wow, that's a deep one. Tough answer. I think it made me think of a comment that Sean made in one of our workshops when we were working with the community on this. And he said that for us to be able to kind of work in a decolonized way, we first need to understand the system. And I think that's what we're trying to do at the moment. Understand how the system works, so that we can then start looking at, okay, so now how can we, change it or break it down? So one of the strands that we're looking at is decolonized approaches, so that we can understand that those that have been in the field for years and have been using these approaches, how are they doing it? Is it working? What can we learn from that? It's like we're saying, we're very ambitious, but we're also very realistic. Like, we're not gonna decolonize things within a year or so, right? We're just very realistic, but it's first getting the good understanding, and then hopefully start using those approaches little by little, and as I said earlier, then to also influence others to use those approaches. But yeah, I'm not seeing this being anytime soon, but we have to start somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who wants to follow on that?
Yeah, I like this question. So, Because I guess I specialize in systems design, systems innovation. Decolonization is and was and is a systematic approach. Yeah. So there is a design format that has been put into place. There is protocols and processes of how that system works and how it operates, and then there is an execution plan, yeah, for it to live, to breathe, and to evolve. That's what systems do. So I'm just breaking down how systems basically work to you. And so when it comes to looking at different approaches, as Savannah says, looking at different approaches, looking at different ways how to kind of extrapolate the information that is there on those current systems, my approach is looking at, and hopefully again with the research and the systematic review, is to look at how systems are designed, look at how systems are broken down, how they are constructed, how they are articulated within that construction of the design, and then researching how can you build your own system. So this is the thing that people don't look at here. How do I build my own system? Yeah. So this is the thing that I actually research and have researched. So I give you an example. So there's something that I've developed called Bofonomics. Bofo is like Ubuntu, South African. It means I am because we are. So in that in itself, that's a system. Yeah, just in that philosophy, there is a system, and then upon that wording, upon that belief, comes the action, and it is manifested into a system. Yeah, and I'm not going to go through the whole systematic approach of that, but there is a system there. So, Bofonomics, I look at economics as an example, and with looking at that, I researched into what are the systematic approaches of how economics impacts local communities. So I went and done that research. Yeah. So then I looked at, oh, this is what this particular system does, how that system works with that other system. Oh, wait a minute, this is called an ecosystem. Okay, an ecosystem. So break down what an ecosystem is. You look into your community and then you go, okay, so as an example, there's 10 of us that live there. This lady cooks breadfruit in the morning. I'm not going to explain what breadfruit is. This is breadfruit in the morning. This person's doing scrambled eggs and bacon and rally. And then all 10 people are doing different things, but they're all a community and they're all an ecosystem. And if everybody came out on a Saturday at 10 a.m. in the morning and we were all famished, every single person could provide something for each other. Now, if you do that for 10 Saturdays, that's your ecosystem, that's your system in place. So it goes back to what I said, you understanding how it is created, how it operates, how it articulates itself, how it comes to life, how it breathes, and how it evolves. And that is just a prime example. So I researched that and then I put it into a context in which everybody can understand. So yeah, so hopefully with that research and the ways in which research is done within your communities, hopefully more of these things can bear fruit.
Can I just add one?
All right, so I just wanted to pick up on one thing that you said about how we're going to reflect on what we've done. And so, we were talking about just the whole approach of, doing this academia, plus the community organization, plus the community members, and writing a piece to be able to share this with others, and this acting like as an example. Because in the whole approach itself, although we can be working on like the methodological aspects of the review, and we have to follow this, and yes, it is maybe grounded in Western philosophy, etc. adding that sedulous aspect in it and being able to add those values does allow that flexibility, and it shifts, and in that way we're almost like decolonizing it. So we're not following the I guess the framework per se. We're adapting it to fit what the purpose is that we need for it. I also wanted to indicate that when it comes to publishing and presenting this research, it will be interesting to see how we write it, because we'll have different sections. When you're doing the review, you're going to have your introduction, you're going to write your methods, you're also going to be reflecting on maybe theories that underpin the whole review and how you interpret things, and using frameworks that allow you to, move away from blaming individuals for their circumstances, and seeing how systems influence and impact inequalities, and looking at causes of causes. That will be a way for us to be able to then show that, okay, we're not blaming individuals here, we're looking at how systems work and how these processes of inequalities and how inequalities interact with different forms. It could be education, it could be housing, it could be employment. So we're also going to be able to bring that into the interpretation of the findings for the paper itself. So I think it's quite important for us, one, reflect on our workings in a way that we can share, but also grounding it in frameworks that allow us to go beyond the individual and look at what the system is doing to lead to these inequalities.
Sure.
Yeah,
go ahead, sure.
I'm going to connect to what you said about ecosystems. I think over the years we've been working in silos. When my grandparents came over in the 60s, they used to have, what was it, the partner? And they used to partner to buy the house.
People still have partners.
we already have the system in place, but we don't always connect. And without the integrity and the unity amongst us, it will never work. So it's got to start with integrity and the trust, and that we carry out, do what we say we're going to do. Because we have all that in place. We live in a great society now, 21st century. We have the internet. We can connect with people that we would never have met 40, 50 years ago just from a click of a button. Obviously, if you have people with an organisation with similar values, how you operate in partnership. So collaborating partnerships are key for that. Because too many of us said, oh, I'm over here doing my thing. I am what I call the Messiah complex. I can save everyone. I said, but there's other people that could help you. You don't know everything. You're not God Almighty. So where we lack, we can find someone else that can help us. In terms of immigration, I used to work in Deutsche Bank, and it was a right-wing bank. They had a lot of, influence amongst the Tory government at the time. And I asked them, you complain about immigration, but most of the cleaners are there from South America, Africa, and like the Philippines, Southeast Pacific. And I said, so how is that possible? He turned around and told me, well, we've got to say that's true, because immigrants work harder than everyone else for less money. So we're not having as many children as before. Population's aging, this is like 10 years ago. So I said, therefore, you have to transport people in from the Commonwealth. So I said, they know this already. And they do, but they said to keep us arguing amongst ourselves, they said, they're coming over taking your jobs. It's an old tactic. I remember my granddad said they used to do that. Even though we have that human connection, they're dividing us based on when there's economic strife. So that's used. So what we have to do to prevent that is create our own seed media, where we're going to legacy media. Now we have the internet. We've got things like podcasts. We can be our own journalists. With the partner system, we can create our own housing association, so people are not homeless. And through our own media, we can say, look, most immigrants come over here and they work harder than native people. So that's why they're coming. We were invited over, my grandparents in the 60s. The same, what's that politician again? The Rivers of Blood speech?
Oh, Enoch
Powell. My granddad told me he's one of the first to come over and say, listen,
well,
not enough people.
Jamaica.
Exactly, decimated after the war, and he's the one that said thing. And then a few years later he said, geez, the serfs are in the palace with us. We've got to push back on that because we're losing our identity. We've got to show that we can coexist without thinking, oh, they're going to take us over like what we've done previously. That's what I noticed. There's a lot of subliminal fear there, and that's why you get these things. It's all built on prejudice and dividing to keep people under control. If we unite, there's nothing that can stop us.
Can I add something quickly to that? The question was about decolonized thinking, and the root of that is the colonisation, and I think that will be a whole other discussion, a whole other event that we may or may not have in the future. But that colonised thinking and the colonised system is based on, it doesn't happen unless there is some kind of deficit embedded. You know, somebody loses out. That is it by its very design. So when we are talking about decolonise, as Dr. Brenda said, we will use some frameworks, established academic processes, but we're not using it to put anybody at a disadvantage. So that decolonised thinking is based on doing things in a way that is equitable. That's the whole reason that we need it in the first place. And it is amazing that we are still talking about this now. My grandfather was on the Windrush in 1948, and we are still now having these discussions, trying to unravel what on earth has happened here. We were invited. We don't deserve to be treated like this. Neither do our children or our grandchildren or our great-grandchildren. You know, so many generations later, we're still trying to unravel this thing, because it is deeply sinister when something is set up in order to leave someone at a disadvantage. Period. You know, we're not even talking about colour here, we're just talking about just basic. It's inhumane to set a system up in that way, and that's why what Daniel is saying and what you research is just really important, to look deeply into something to see, well, why does this thing work this way? And why doesn't it work the other way? You know, it's like the children's book, Noughts and Crosses. You know, what happens if you flip the model? Oh wow, now I can see it. Now I can see exactly how unfair it is. Now I can see why we can't possibly keep living like this. You know, this is part of the decolonised thinking. It's like flipping the switch and suddenly kind of waking up to the reality. And we will just keep doing it until it's done. Next question.
Personally, I want to thank you all, because it has been a very amazing night, wonderful night, very inspiring for our this conversation and this last question. Thank you. But I want a little spoiler about the systematic review, the results you are seeing all these academic issues. There is some experience that is old, it's very nice, this is different way to do that. This really share power, and there is some insightful moments or experience or something you can share with us.
Raquel?
Spill the tea.
This one.
Okay, so where do I start? There's a few things we can say. Obviously, we haven't completed it, so I can't necessarily give a full overview of what we have left. From the strands that I'm doing, which is creative and participatory strands, I found quite interesting information. So, for example, the participatory strands, quite a lot of information I found is, number one, there's a lot more papers out there about participatory methods compared to creative. Creative was much more limited. So numbers very much there was thousands when I knew differences. When I think about the participatory strands, is that what I noticed quite quickly was that there was a lot of papers where the title itself said participatory. So I would automatically assume that that paper would be embedded. The method itself would be embedded. Once you get reading into the paper, the methods are not there. There's no community element, there's no co-researchers, there's nothing involved. But yet they still call the paper participatory methods within the community. Why? Why call something that, if it's not actually intertwined with the project that you're doing, it makes no sense. with the creative side, and it really frustrated me with the creative side, to be honest, because I came across some papers where it said that the creative methods are not as rigorous compared to all of the other research methods. And that bothers me. And I say it bothers me because when it comes to our communities with so much diversity and so much nuance, the natural methods do not work. We all have different ways of learning and understanding, right? We're all humans in many different ways. Whether it be neurodiversity, whether it be a language barrier, whether it be just not having the right type of education as a child. How do you get people like that in a room if you just limited them to such specific methods? Why are we not molding methods together? Why aren't we thinking, okay, these are the community that I want to reach. Let's make the methods around that community. Let's not make it overall. It doesn't exist that way. How can we truly say that research is accessible is for the community, where the community feels that they feel valued, they feel included? How can they truly say, I want to be a part of research? If we're not making research for them, not for us. It shouldn't be about us. It shouldn't be about the authors, the people who are writing the report. It should be about them. And I think that's what came out to me when it came for the participatory and the creative, where why aren't we moulding them both? With the creative, a lot of the participatory methods, a lot of the kind of, for example, the co-researchers were involved in the creative strands as well. But why aren't they talked about more? Why is it that the strand and that creative element was so low compared to the participatory strand? It always goes back to, they see it as less rigorous. Yeah, and I guess for me that's really bothered me, that why are we defining methods like this? Why are we not defining it for the community who we are serving? It just didn't make any sense to me. But yeah, that's a small sneak peek into what I'm doing. I don't want to give away too much. But yeah, I'll pass it on to Savon.
I guess similar to Raquel, so I'm leading on the qualitative and the decolonized approaches strand. So I still very much working on the qualitative strand, and I think what stood out for me there is that lived experience is being mentioned in almost every paper, right? But then when you kind of look into the methodologies, as in like what are you actually doing to really, center that lived experience, you actually see that they're not really doing much to really truly do that. So another thing that stood out for me is that we decided to include grey literature. So for those that are unfamiliar with the term, it means that we're not just looking at peer-reviewed articles, we are also including dissertations and other types of reports. So we happened to have a lot of dissertations within our research. Dissertations, I actually enjoy the dissertations much more than the peer-reviewed articles, because I think the peer-reviewed articles, they're so summarized, so focused on the findings, but not necessarily focused on how are we doing this, right? And I think that's where a lot of the issues come from, because there's not enough focus on how the research is being done. And then I found out also, and I'm gonna be coming back with the numbers on this, but I started kind of looking at the positionality of the researchers. So the dissertations that really stand out, that are using the right ways of doing things, they are often people that are marginalized themselves. So they come from their own lived experience, and therefore looking into a specific subject around their lived experience. And therefore, I think they are, and this is an assumption, they are more committed to kind of doing it the right way. Whereas I'm looking at like the peer-reviewed articles, I find that I'm lacking that. And again, I'm going to come back, Brenda, I'm going to ask you how to help me bring this out. Yeah, I found that really interesting. So again, what I said earlier, like it's not that academic research is bad on its own, it's just maybe more of us should be doing this, so that more of us are doing it the right way, and therefore it becomes the norm. I think that's probably the issue. Because I don't know about you lot, but when I started in community research, I was highly skeptical. because before I started doing this, I thought this is not for me. This is not for people like me, right? Because when I thought about a researcher, I would kind of imagine like a white middle-aged male. Sorry, you know. That was kind of my view of a researcher. It wasn't people like us, right? So now I'm seeing that actually more and more of us are going into research and are doing it the right way. And I think we just need to kind of keep that going. Like, how can we get more of us to do this? So yeah, I've been really enjoying the dissertations. So just so you understand, like some of these papers are like 150, 200, 250 pages long. But I've been enjoying those more than the short peer-reviewed articles that are maybe like 15 to 20 pages. Because there's just so much more in there. And like I said, I can really feel the people, what they're trying to do with the research. I think that's quite powerful. So I'm gonna have to find a way to kind of bring this out as one of our findings. And yeah, we're still in the middle of the data extraction, so unfortunately I can't tell much more, but I hope that gives you a little bit of a glimpse.
Question 5. Can I just say, oh, you've got another question.
I'd just like to say thank you as well. It was really informative and really interesting. Speak up. Oh, should I speak? Yeah, I just want to say thank you, that was all. And ask, in terms of kind of embedding love in the system of research, how kind of, what is a community-based method for research that you believe facilitates love when in research is often very cold and systematic? How do you believe we can do that?
The mic appeared in my hand. The mic appeared in my hand. Okay. How I'm going to first answer this is a kind of a big up and a shout out to Sedulous. Raquel was just talking about a little bit of the frustration around the lack of creativity within research. So I spoke to an academic a couple months back, and I spoke about creative quants. Yeah, so that's qualitative. So the qualitative data is just numbers, basically. Yeah, so you know when you get surveys, and they'll count how many people filled out the survey, how many of you answered that particular question in the survey. I spoke to them about creative quants. And I was like, creative quants, what's that? And I said, okay, it's something that I'm trying to coin, trying to put into the system. And what I mean by that is this. So creative quants is basically you find a way of getting as many different people in the room. Yeah. So you're being creative about how you are convening people. Yeah. How you are then having conversations and discussions on research, as an example. This is a creative way to do it. Yeah. There are other methods and methodologies in order to be creative. And so you're able to get the numbers that you want, yeah. You are able to also acquire the voices that you need to hear as well, because we've heard so many different diverse voices already. So we've been able to do that. So that I explained to him as creative quants. I said, okay, that's quite interesting. I've never heard that before, and it's never in any paper I've seen. I was like, no, it's not. But hopefully, this is where it's important that, as I'm a representation of a community, this is my voice, and I'm not speaking for the community, but this is my voice. I've had a certain lived experience, and I have a professional experience as well, which has allowed me to determine that fact. Yeah, and now I can leave it up to you whether you want to validate it. Yeah, but because this is where the big up again comes to you lot, is that you have organisations such as Sedulous that are able to do these things that can be validated, and is validated by the most important people, who are yourselves. Yeah? So that's one way in which the love is instilled in this, because it feels quite warm, doesn't it? It doesn't feel quite cold when we're having something like this. Yes, we are panel, we are the panel, but we're speaking from our lived experience as well, not just from our professional guidance. Yeah, we are speaking from a place in which we have connections, which we have involvement, which we are contributing to things that we love. Yeah, we are looking at how we can make change because we see people, we connect with people on a day-to-day basis, and we say, okay, there's a familiarity there. We're all kind of struggling, we're all kind of striving for joy, for betterment, better health, and all of these things that we're all trying to strive for. So how do we equip ourselves to do it? So you set up an organisation that can equip themselves to go and do research in a particular way that then grounds itself in love. Yeah, it grounds itself in love, so it doesn't feel like you're isolated. It feels like a place where you can all come to. It feels like when they were doing the workshops that you can put animals in the world on the wall. People are like, animals? What's animals related to me? Well, some of us have pets. That's how. Okay, for instance, and then like you're in an environment, and you create a terrain in your mind which feels comfortable to you, yeah? Which feels familiar to you. It smells, it tastes familiar to you. And this is how, and I know it sounds so like abstract when I'm saying these things, but it's real because we're here, we're a testament to it. And as Sean mentioned, this is now recorded. So it's gonna be a living entity on the internet forevermore. Yeah? Until AI takes over, but I'm only joking. But and then I guess the other thing to make it a bit more tangible is when you are creating methodologies, when you are creating approaches and initiatives, it's fundamental that you make sure that you take pride out of it. Yeah? And what I mean by that is, because you can take pride in doing things, yeah? But what I mean by this is that when you spoke of authors, when you spoke of people that are publishing things, when you're speaking of people that are affirming themselves with accolades and personal achievement, that's about them, yeah? And so they want to make the case that, look at me, look what I've done this diligent work, I now need this kudos because I've done the rigor, right? And what you forget is that without you speaking to someone, without you being able to have a conversation, do a consultation, without you doing workshops, focus groups, co-design, co-production, and all these things with other people, you do not get the information, the data, the evidence that is required to give you those accolades. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So it is not about you, as you said earlier on, it's not about you. So that's why when I say remove the pride and you replace that with love, that's what you get. This sedulous.
I think she's satisfied with Okay, we've got time for a couple more questions.
Thank you for the very rich discussion. Also, somebody who works in academia and have recognised the importance of research in the work that you do, but also as a black academic, kind of recognise the limitations of research. And I just wonder, in your processes, have you thought about the limitations of research and the pitfalls are sometimes what can happen? Maybe it's a bit of advice as well as a question, is in the sense of where you say, okay, you do the research, then we say, there's a gap. And then we say, so we need to do more research. And they say, and there's a gap. and we still need to do more research, and more research, and more research. Yet the systematic issues, which the research was about, is never improved. And then you're looking at like healthcare. So there's been so many papers about healthcare, racialized inequality in healthcare, but actually they still racialized inequality in healthcare. So how do we kind of recognize some of those limitations and have a go about that, and then how might be the actions maybe that stem from that? Now that's a hard question because I haven't worked in this space and that is very challenging, but I suppose it's just interesting to kind of get your thoughts and reflections on it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Yes, we are definitely aware of the limitations, which is why I keep saying we're very ambitious, but we're also being realistic, right? So this is for us a starting point. First to get the understanding, and we're obviously going to identify loads of gaps. I'm very sure of that. But I think it's good to recognize the gaps, but also not let the gaps stop us and go in that more research cycle. What are the things that we identified that we can use now and put into action whilst we're working on filling some of the gaps? Yeah, there has to be a bit of realism because, yeah, you're right, because there are definitely many gaps. I've already identified so many, but I think it's just not getting fixated on those. Use what we found, what we can use for now, whilst we keep building. As Brenda mentioned earlier, we're looking to turn this into a living review. So, we'll just keep looking. We keep looking and we keep improving without kind of being stuck, as in like, we're still missing this, we're still missing that. No, there's enough that's going to come out of this that we can actually use right now. And then, little by little, we'll start working on the gaps. And I think this is also kind of coming back to the influencing, right? So it doesn't always have to be us that start working on the gaps. Are there any other academics or other research that can take on some of the gaps that we identify, right? Is there any collaboration that we can do in that area? It's not just about us. We're not here for the accolades, as Daniel's been saying. It's like, how do we leave a legacy? And, it's just by creating something that continues way beyond cellulose.
Can I answer?
Yeah, sure.
At the beginning of the session, I think I remembered, I mentioned to you all critical friends, supportive members, and over this past year, apart from the events that we've held, we've also struck up a membership. We've started a membership platform. We're aiming for 100 members to begin with. We're getting close to that number. It's the Nuff Sed collective. And this kind of incorporates everything that we've been talking about the change being meaningful, about the sense of care and love and diligence, because from all of those critical friends and supportive followers, some have stepped up to become members, to commit themselves to membership, to this platform. And we have, I don't know how many strands, 30 strands of interest and expertise. People are coming from many different areas, and they could be community, they could be stakeholders. It's open. Our membership is open. Yes, we are interested in helping marginalised communities, but you don't have to be marginalised to join us, So this is where the secret sauce is for us, is that it's about true inclusivity, like 360 degrees inclusivity. And hopefully, over time, that kind of mindset and that kind of approach is going to start challenging that experience that you've just, that really frustrating cycle of inadequate, come up with more, find more, do more. Like, enough already. We know what the issues are. We would like to work on solutions. Thank you. Let's move on. This is how we're approaching it, and we're hoping that with the founding members that we have now, which are a really good mix of different backgrounds, we're hoping that momentum is going to build, it's going to grow, it's going to smash it. Simple.
Thank you very much. It's been really, I mean, as soon as I thought this was interesting, it actually went in different ways. It feels like one of those paintings that goes in different directions and different things. So it's very hard when I'm trying to compose the question and all the other additional questions made it even more challenging. To me, there's a couple of interesting challenges about your challenging power structures, academia and in the community. Structures that actually haven't, when I'm reflecting on this, haven't probably changed in about 150 years, meaning the journal. And part of the challenge about the journal, I've sat in many sessions about writing papers for journals, and you find that, well, you take what academic piece of research, what we were picking up earlier about the or the dissertations are more interesting. That's because the journal editors and the peer researchers are saying you've got to change. Now you've got to change. I was actually surprised to hear that they sometimes have to change. Even some of, if they've done a piece of research, they have to change almost the whole conceptual element to fit within this narrow remit to get published. And why do they want to get published? Because in the research as well, that's how you get profile, and your institution gets profile. So there's something in the system. And likewise with communities. We've got a council system or a local authority system that hasn't really changed. But there are bits of innovation. I suppose the challenge I put to you is using the methodology in this systematic review. Publish your own journal, based on the methods that you've got there, and I'd be interested in what you say about that. But also, around communities, and we know there's a mistrust of trust. Trust seems to be crucial of this, but also about lack of action. You want action. What about, it struck me the word that came out here was about grassroots approach, but community devolution. There's got to be a question where you want to go back to, I guess it could be NHS or local authority and say, look, we can make the change here if you give us the things, but you've got to devolve some of that, and actually you'll get better results. But you know, it's small steps, and I just wonder whether there's anything in what you're hearing there that talks around this idea of devolving power, but still maintaining it, because of course they don't want it, it's that equitable thing, they don't want to give it up. But they're clearly not getting, they're doing the same thing as we said earlier, doing the same thing again and again and not getting the results, which I think Einstein said was mad. So, is there an opportunity here? And I'm just interested in knowing about a few feeds into that. Sorry, quite a long question.
Very, very interesting.
Can I have mine and then?
Sorry.
Can I have my point and then?
Add it. Is it added to that? Yeah.
In fact, it was very on that theme. I just wrote it down so I didn't forget. Just in terms of the global exploitative imperialistic system that we're all operating under, I think in terms of them not recognising the humanity of people, you know, they do research because they want you to think that they're actually, not you as in settlers, but the wider society as in wanting people to think that they're part of it, and that what they're doing is going to be of benefit, but it never is, because the way the system is, it's there to maintain itself in terms of its exploitation. So how are we going to inform and mobilise communities to see that, so that we are not continually being taken advantage of?
Well, there was a lot in both of your questions. I guess, you know, Daniel touched on this already, and I'm going to pass it on to him after this. But on a personal level, I don't really believe in systems change. The system is working perfectly fine as it was intended, right? So on a personal level, I'm more about creating our own system, you know. So just like Daniel said earlier, like, we're creating our own ecosystem here. You know, we're doing things our way. We're obviously still using bits of the system because that's just inevitable. However, we're using it in a better way, right? And while we're seeing gaps, we can then try to fill some of those gaps or make certain adaptations to some of the ways that we think, like, actually, that's pretty good, but if we do it slightly different, it might actually be better, right? So creating our own ecosystem, creating our own approaches, creating our own way of doing things, and then in the process influencing others to join the movement. As Valerie's been saying, that's the whole idea behind the Nuff Sed collective. Like Valerie said, like we've literally have people from all sorts of professional backgrounds, right? And we're all there for one goal. And in that essence, we're already creating something that's outside of the system, even though some of the people are part of the system. But we're still doing it in our own kind of way. I'm going to pass it on to Daniel because I'm sure.
I'm going to pass it on to yourself after, because I have a question as well from an academic perspective. So that's really interesting. So being involved in devolved funding, as an example, I'll give an example. So creating a community-led fund, which basically meant that working with the community, working with established local organizations, working with local authority, working with NHS institutions like the GPs and things of that nature. So sitting around the table, thrashing it out with each other, and then within there, everybody's around the table, so there is equity in a sense, yeah? And you're all on the same level, and you can then set the parameters of that conversation. So one, for instance, this is not a rule, but it's a suggestion of equal values in the room. Language. What language are we going to adopt here? Yeah, so everybody can understand what everybody's saying. So you're not now going to go and use your jargon and talk about 2P3XI1. I don't know what that is. Yeah, I really don't. So we need to have familiar language that we can speak to with each other. That's equity, right? And then when we're now devising something that can now be shared and can be measured by each other, that is what devolved is. Yeah. So now, when we want to produce something for the community, it's been designed, it's been produced with community members, yeah, and that's not just with community members in mind. That's with community members, and it's also been designed with the local authority, who has certain powers and obligations to the said community. And then other proprietors, stakeholders that are also in the room, yeah, that have other powers and responsibilities, and all of that also can mean that people are held to account, yeah. So accountability, because one thing that wasn't mentioned today was accountability, yeah, and that is really important. So when we're talking about devolved, it's who is accountable for this, who's accountable for the change. Like I mentioned earlier on about the 10 minutes, who's accountable for making?
And I don't know.
Well, there you go. There you go. Who made that decision and who's accountable for that? Yeah, there's people that are on the other end of receiving, and not benefiting from it, but who's accountable? So, in relation to both questions, in terms of bringing people together and convening people together to have these conversations, like the list has just been mentioned, there are a number of people, residents, professionals, stakeholders, and an X amount of varied people that can potentially come together, collaborate with one another. And one of the other things what wasn't mentioned earlier is creating an infrastructure to do that. Yeah, I think infrastructures are really important. Yeah, this is what systems are built on. Infrastructure. I think infrastructures are really important. An infrastructure is, just to be very simple about this, an infrastructure is the agenda for today. That's an infrastructure, you know. That's how simple it is. People are not even explaining that to you. Yeah, but that's how simple it is. And then you build in the infrastructure you want. We build in the outcome that we want to happen for tonight. So is it going well? Yeah. There you go. Yeah, so the infrastructure is working. So again, bringing people together, having those frank conversations and working with each other to build something concise and not, as you said, fit for
one size fits all.
One size fits all, but fit for purpose. Yeah, this is what we're trying to do. So the reason why I'm going to pass it on to you is because from academia, my question is how can we enable that to happen? So how can academics, faculty members come to the table, come amongst the community, understanding that they're a part of a colonial system, yeah, that has subjugated, that has oppressed, and has utilized the divide and conquer and rule for so long. How can you come out of that? Because I understand that, again, it was mentioned, 100 years, 150 years. So imagine that has been deployed in somebody's head, and then generations after that, that's the same thing that they think about and over again. Yeah. So then when they come in and you talk about shifting power, how do you shift power? Nobody knows. I didn't even know I was given power in the first place. Yeah, I'm just operating in the way and how the system is built. I don't know any other way. I worked and I grafted. I went to university and I was told if I study for 7 years or 10 years, I'll get a PhD. And now I'm a part of this great institution. And then you want me to now give up all of that. So my question again is, how can we? Sorry, I know. I told you. I get grounded in amongst the people. But yeah. So that question is, how do we do that?
Okay, it's a really, really big question, Daniel. And as it's been mentioned, these inequalities have been going on for years, for decades, centuries, and the shift is going to take time. But I do see this shift happening, and there's different initiatives that are happening in academia, that are happening with funding bodies, that are recognizing the importance of collaboration with communities. Even to journals, I am an editorial board member for the Sociology of Health and Illness, and they have these initiatives to make the voices of minoritized scholars more visible, and they've got different initiatives that have been happening all through. So one is it's like to collate all papers written by minoritized scholars, making them free for and accessible to people, having special issues for them to actually publish their papers as well. But within academia as well, the decolonizing the curriculum, trying to get books from scholars who are not necessarily considered the white, I suppose. So getting them established in the reading. So there's those particular drives that have been going on for some time. And I'll move on to funding, because research requires funding. It requires a lot of resources. It takes time. And funders are shifting now to allow you to, when you're applying for funding, to be able to show how the impact that you're going to have on with your research. So I'm coming here, my name's Brenda, this is my piece of research. They want you to show in your application that you have actually embedded community voices from the very start. It's not just about saying that I've got this research, I'm going to go and interview X amount of people, I'm going to publish 2 papers. Right now, there's a drive to actually show how have you embedded the voices of minoritized people from the very beginning, not towards the end, and just adding them on. Recently, there's a funding body that I'm working with, Bart's Charity. They want to show how you're going to continue that engagement as well. So I can see these small changes taking place. It's not been there for a very long time, but it is a drive. And then the impact as well. When it comes to publishing papers, we're not necessarily going to be focusing on journals. There's creative ways that we can spread the message. So even if the paper that the systematic review that we're doing doesn't fit the criteria of a particular journal, maybe it's got 8,000 words and we've got 20,000 words, we can have a report, we can disseminate it through podcasts, we can disseminate it through animations, through infographics, through ways that we can reach communities. So I am seeing the changes happening in the different bodies that I guess make up the infrastructure that makes up academia and this research space. However, I know it's going to be slow, and we just need to keep on, just chipping away at it. I wish I had a bigger answer, but
that's chipping.
Okay, right. I think we've managed to just about stick to time, more or less. It's been great having you here, and I think we've all agreed civil society can do better. It can it deserves better, and we can, you know, have a different reality if we build it ourselves. So I think definitely we are agreed on that. Thank you very much.